they started, they went round the masjid, and you just sort of basically prayed in another area, and then they come back round. But you never ever felt, even though you weren't wearing your shoes, you never ever felt that you were treading on dirt. It was so clean and so pure. And of course, being there right in Mecca, you felt that purity of nature all around you and the mosque in any case. Alhamdulillah. What a lovely journey there to Abu Dhabi. I cannot wait to see more adventures on our travels with me. Don't know where they're going to go next, but tune in and, see the next episode, inshallah. Now, we are off for a short commercial break, but when we get back, we will be joined by the wonderful Yasmin Hoque. So we will see you shortly after the break. Don't go away. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now in the studio we have got Yasmin Hoque, solicitor, law lecturer and the founder of ALHQ Law and More, which aims to empower the Muslim community with practical legal solutions. Assalamu alaikum, Yasmin.
Wa alaikum salam, sister.
How are you today?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, very well, thank you.
Alhamdulillah, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here in the studio talking to us about something very important, all things law and wills, inshallah. But first of all, I'd like to know how you got into law and, was this a subject that you had always wanted to study? Tell us more about your background.
So, yes, law I've been doing for a very long time in practice, about coming up to 20 years now. If I recall, 2002, I started my LLB degree. Mm-hmm. And it was here at Queen Mary University in London. And I always enjoyed reading books. I think that was my passion and motivation for going into law, because I heard there was a lot of reading, a lot of writing.
So you were a big reader anyway.
Yes.
You just loved to read, get all that information in, and then I guess you started to learn about the law.
That's it. So when you start off at university, you get probably, if I put all the books here, there'll be a huge pile, very, very high, of all the different texts you need to read. The reading lists are very long.
They do. They just sort of give you the whole list and go, get on with it, don't
exactly.
they? I remember when I went to university, I was so shocked when they gave me the reading list. I thought, I'm never going to get through this. But for you, second nature then?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading the different texts and learning about the law. And the natural next step was to go into the practical side of it. So
yes.
Completed a training contract, started working for law firms, doing different kinds of legal practice work, high value cases, complex cases. And I think gradually I started to recognise the practical law that you do day to day, the client transactions. They're different to the theory or the academic side of the law you would have spent time in university, postgraduate studies learning. And I recognised that, and you adapt. So when I was...
So your learning really started as you were working?
On the job, yeah.
On the job, right. Because we do imagine that, well, you've just learnt everything and now you can put it into practice. But as you said, that's when you first start learning, really, is your first day.
Exactly, yep. So when you're dealing with the clients and when you're implementing that, it's completely different. So the skills that you need in your office work and dealing with the clients is very different.
Yes.
So that's how I kind of adapted to the legal industry, recognising that everything I had learned, although was the foundation of law, the kind of English legal system, the different rules of interpretation, the, what would you call it, the justice, rule of law, all the kind of, I find it very enjoyable, to be fair.
Well, it is interesting, but just so much to sort of take in, really. Now, I mean, talk us through a little bit about empowering the Muslim community through practical legal solutions, because, I don't know about the viewers out there, but for me, I don't know much about the law and how it applies to me. Can it empower us as a community?
I believe so. So in my legal practice, I recognise that often finances can be a barrier to people accessing legal services. I also recognise that the solutions that people are looking for, based on their ideals of what they want to achieve in their case or issue, doesn't really match what is happening in practice all the time, due to many different combination of factors, how the system is set up.
Could you give us an example I mean, how there is a bit of a mismatch out there.
There is a mismatch in the sense that the legal industry is very focused on profit because it has to be. They're businesses. I've set up the business ALHQ Law, and I recognise that there is a business side to it. So you have to obviously make profit to keep the businesses thriving. But I felt that in that process, there must be another way, that you should be able to deliver the services, the learning of the law and what is taught in a way where you can still have a business, but you're not creating barriers for people.
Right, so you're not losing the sense of the actual purpose,
the justice,
of the justice system there, and as we're saying, empowering the community. I mean, it's for everybody, isn't it? Law is not just for us to learn, to keep in, you know. There's a practical side to it. So, you know, again, with the empowering, how do we feel empowered? I mean, obviously by learning more, educating ourselves on it. But which part of the legal system is actually going to help us in real life?
So I'm a solicitor practicing in England and Wales. I'm very comfortable and, you know, recognise how the process works to achieve what you need to achieve. But as a Muslim, when I reflected on what's in the Quran and the Hadiths about certain aspects of law, I felt like there is a lot of content there where you may read it and not do anything with it, or think that you can't do it because you're in the UK, for example. But because I've been in the industry for a long time and I've created solutions for people, the practice that I've set up aims to deliver what we find in the Quran and Hadiths to implement them in our day-to-day lives. And I felt that if somebody is keen to achieve that, they will ultimately, for us as believers, we are aiming for Jannah. So that's our end goal. It's not necessarily that one isolated case or issue, and we can sometimes get a bit sucked into that cases can last for years, and they really
so
affect
ultimately,
you.
like you're saying, this is the justice that we've been sort of taught in Islam, you know, in the Quran, that, you know, we should aim for justice. We need to make things right. We need to be fair. Fairness in the Quran is very important.
I think
and
so.
I guess through the law and through learning the legal system, we can make our lives fair, and also for the next generation, ensure that they are being treated fairly, with wills and life planning. So tell us a bit, what, for example, a Muslim will, what makes it Muslim? Why is it important?
So for Muslims, we are encouraged to write a will. There's a specific hadith that says you should not let 2 nights pass without writing a will.
Yes.
And then upon hearing that, the response of the person was that I would not let 1 night pass even. So there was that urgency.
Wow. So very, very important to think about it and get something done, something written down.
Yeah, I believe so. And even you could refer to the Quran and go to the verses yourself and think, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling me here? So verses in Surah Baqarah, 180, 181, 182. I always encourage my clients, just read it yourself. Even you don't need me to tell you or make it seem like it's just a tick box exercise. It should be a soul nourishing experience that you want to do this.
Tell us what it says, though, for those perhaps that don't know the stories in general. Just generally, what does it encourage?
So
what is that sort of encouraging us to do?
Yes, Surah Baqarah encourages us to ensure that we leave our family with the right shares of inheritance. It specifies that, you know, parents, spouses, children are to be included. And then if you go on to Surah Nisa and verses 7, 11, 12 and 176, so there's quite a collection, I would say, when I was reading it from a legal mind, if you like. So I'm looking at it from a lawyer's perspective, and I'm thinking, gosh, I've got the beginning, the middle and the end here. So there is a way to deliver this for Muslims because we are instructed to do this. And I feel that no matter which country or jurisdiction you're living in, you will have different laws and different systems set up. But they shouldn't be a barrier to you achieving your ultimate goal of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes,
and you
absolutely. Yeah. So, now, the thing is, writing a will, a lot of people may say, okay, well, I've told my brother, I've told my sister, I've told my children what my wishes are, you know, when I pass away. They know what is going to happen to the house, to the assets, or whatever. why do they need to write a will? Why write it down?
So there are laws in place which come into effect if you don't make a legally binding will. And I emphasise going with a regulated will, so you have all of the protections that you can get in England and Wales to have a document which will fulfil those wishes. And so then they become, that's why it's empowering, in my point of view, because they become more than wishes, they become rights.
Okay.
And
So once
obligations,
it's
so
written
they
down
have to do it. Yeah.
and witnessed.
Yes.
So not just written down on a scrap piece of paper.
No, well, technically you can write
Really?
it down like that.
Is that still legal? Okay.
It can be.
Yeah.
If you do it in the right way, there's nothing to stop you doing a handwritten will.
Okay.
They're referred to as holographic wills, and it's
I wondered
possible.
what that was, because on your social media you put about
Yes.
holographic wills, and I thought, is this some sort of modern thing?
Technical thing.
Yes, and it appears just out there in midair, and you can read it as you go along. I was actually a bit confused, so I'm happy for you to explain what that is.
Yes, same. I thought this is going to be something which is useful for people to know. So I always try to share beneficial knowledge on my social media. And I thought if I read that, as an average everyday person, I would not have a clue. So let me go into detail and explain that it's literally a handwritten will.
Right.
And the legalities for making it legally valid can be achieved. But in certain circumstances, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with wealth and a big family, you should take the effort to get professional advice, because you might write down something in a handwritten version and it ends up being legally valid, but then you've not thought what will be the consequences of that. Will there be tax implications?
Yes.
Have I made use of the correct legal procedures that I can to create less hardship for your family members? So,
Because you could accidentally give them more problems, is that right?
That's right. So when they go to implement the will, because it is legally valid and you've written it down, you end up potentially having to pay tax. So the system...
Is that inheritance tax?
Inheritance tax. You would have to pay. You have to pay off your funeral expenses, debts. So I find a lot of correlation between what we're instructed to do in the hadiths about inheritance and what the English legal system already has set up in acts of legislation.
Okay.
So
I mean, well, a lot of people you made the point that if you're blessed by Allah, you may have a lot of assets. What if you feel you don't have anything? Just living in your own house, that's an asset, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about if perhaps you don't own your own house, but you, for example, are worried about what happens to your children?
Yes.
Is that a reason to write a will as well, I presume?
Absolutely. So
it's not just assets and things,
Yeah.
but people.
People as well, yeah.
And the care.
As believers, we are working on the day-to-day basis. So, whether we're going to wake up tomorrow, we don't know. So if we are having that mentality and we want to implement it in our lives, if we have got young children and you haven't said where should the children be looked after, who are the guardians, legally appointed guardians for these children, then, systems are in place to help you, and that will be social services, and other authorities will come in to help you identify where the children should go. For example, God forbid an accident happens and both the mum and dad pass at the same time. You have children, you may have expressed a wish that my sister or my brother or parents look after the children, but they will not have the legal authority immediately to do that. They will need to go through an application procedure. And in the meantime, if there's any concern about safeguarding or issues that they might be okay, legally, the systems have to come in to help the children, protect the children. And that might not, they may end up in an un-Islamic environment.
Yes, or that person may not be the person you wished to look after.
Yes, exactly. So you can avoid all of that by having that written as well.
I guess it makes it clear, it makes it simple. I guess it's a weight off your mind while you're living as well. I mean, it's not just all about when we die. It's about making our quality of life better. So if you feel relaxed, that everything's in order, your ducks are in a row, everything's, the paperwork's done, that your children are going to be safe, inshallah, then you can have a better quality of life as well, can't you?
Yeah.
But as you said, the inheritance tax, let me just talk about that, if you could talk to us a little bit more about that, because, we do want to give what we have to our children. Often we say, right, I'm just leaving everything to my children. You mentioned this might not be necessarily the best way, or that you may have something, you may need another level of protection in order. So tell us about inheritance tax, what it is, and how we can avoid that.
So inheritance tax is known as the death tax, and it applies to anything above £325,000 of your total estate value. Everyone has an allowance like you have with income tax or other taxes, and for inheritance it's £325,000.
Yes.
If you're underneath that, you will not have any tax to pay.
Okay.
And there are also other exemptions for commercial properties, residential properties, and all of that can help ensure that the loved ones end up with more and the tax is reduced. If you are leaving everything directly to them, sometimes you're trying to fulfill the Islamic shares. So when you divide things up in the Islamic share way, that can result in more tax because you haven't implemented the exemptions which are available. So one particular exemption is that if you leave everything to your legally married spouse, it's tax-free. And that could be, millions of pounds or unlimited value if it's to the spouse, and both of you are domiciled in England and Wales. There's that exemption between spouses. So there are lots of ways that you can plan for that if you have a high value estate. So I try to provide advice which covers the whole spectrum for Muslims. So you could be someone who doesn't have anything, but then when you talk to an advisor, you realise you actually do have things. It may not be a property, but it could be jewellery, it could be clothing that's expensive, vehicles, mobile phones are quite expensive these days.
It's amazing, isn't it? Things that you don't think of as well.
Yeah.
And obviously we do want to stick to the law. We do want to do things correctly. We want to stick to Islamic law, but also English law. So we want to make sure everything is done correctly. But I would never think that my mobile phone's an asset. What is an asset? Is it literally anything you have in your house, anything that you've bought?
Yes, so the definition of assets is very wide in the sense it includes property, possessions, and now it also includes digital assets. So it could be you've built up social media presence and it has value to it.
Really? So just your presence on social media?
But some people, influencers,
that's amazing.
There's a value to it. You wouldn't
I guess.
want it to be used by someone else, for example. Or
it's always like when people, when celebrities say, talking about insuring parts of their body, or, a hand model goes, I'm going to insure my hands because, over time I've built this up as my business as an influencer or something. It's almost something like that, isn't it?
It actually does include, you may have life insurance policies, pension schemes with your employer that you've been putting away because they do that when you start a job, you have a pension pot.
Yes.
All of those kind of policies and schemes will come into the mix of your estate, and in your lifetime you may have nominated people or done things with them, but if you haven't, I think that's where you leave a little bit of hardship potentially for others to sort that out.
As well, your cat, your dog, or your rabbit.
Yes, if you have a particularly expensive pet that needs care.
I don't know, what are they, Labradoodles or something, or one of those expensive cats. I can't remember what they're called now, but but there's quite a few of them. I mean, even your Siberian cat may cost £1,000 or something like that. They're not cheap these days if you get a pedigree, are they?
No,
so that's all something to consider.
Yes, I think people don't think of it from an Islamic perspective. So. You have this duty towards your loved ones and including your pets and animals to be caring towards them, looking after them and providing for them.
Yes.
And it shouldn't end just because you've passed away and you think, well, I don't care what happens.
Yes.
We can't be like that as believers. We have to care and we have to provide.
Well, I guess if we don't care, you're almost burdening the next generation or burdening I mean, it's hard enough when someone passes away,
exactly.
But to then have to sort out all their paperwork. I mean, because you're already grieving. If somebody in your family has passed away, you're grieving for them. You're sad. You may fall into depression, because of it, and you may not be able to cope with the paperwork that comes with, a death in the family. It's all quite sad. But as you said, if I guess in life we've been used to doing. Working, within the legal system and understand the law, then these things become a little bit easier, don't they? And we don't have those burdens when we're already suffering.
That's exactly it. The majority part of the work I do is just alleviating that anxiety and stress that people initially feel. So it is a bit of a panic when there isn't anything written down and you're trying to work out, what shall I do? And if something is written down, it's actually much easier for myself as a advisor when the probate work comes up and you're thinking, how can I distribute this, keep everyone updated and ensure it's fulfilled. A written down will, you follow one type of probate procedure and it's much less time consuming, much less expensive potentially, and a generally easier process, because ultimately you just want to inherit the items and not have to engage the lawyers for a long period of time and make it complex. So I find just being able to explain to people where they stand, what they can do, that's the most rewarding aspect of my job.
I mean, you're quite an inspiration. I mean, like, just for me hearing you, mashallah, to hear that, you know, that there is actually a lot to consider. I mean, I just thought, well, really, perhaps, you know, I'm not really into sort of learning about the legal system, but now I feel like I should educate myself. I should learn about how to make a will. And seeing it, as you said, that it's part of Islamic lifestyle, it becomes even more important for us to do that. But also for the young ones going into law, I hope, inshallah, that you've inspired them, because it's a subject that I think a lot more women, a lot more young ladies should take up and go into. And you're clearly enjoying it, you know, mashallah. So, as you said, social media, what's your social media handles?
So I've got @ALHQ_law, and that's Instagram, where I put most of my creative work, if you like, in terms of the knowledge and the ideas that you can learn immediately on there. And then you'll find...
and webinars?
Yep, webinars I do.
So people can learn more?
I try to help mosques with that, because I feel like, mashallah, we have a really strong community of scholars and people knowledgeable about the Quranic verses and hadiths, and we enjoy watching maybe on YouTube or the lectures and everything. So I try to tap into that to explain, okay, well, we can make it happen.
Yes.
So, and these are the steps practically to do.
Amazing. That's lovely. Thank you so much. Absolutely wonderful to have you here today talking to us about, you know, wills and assets and all things legal as well. You know, do come again and talk to us. And if any of our viewers out there do want to learn more, Sister Yasmin, she does webinars about wills, because it can become a little bit overwhelming when you have all the information all at once. But she said she's quite happy to talk to people, to, you know, you can learn from her social media as well, learn a little bit more about the making of wills and everything that goes with that as well. Thank you so much. Wow, beneficial morning so far, and we've got lots more to come all the way until 12 p.m. right here on Salaam Britain. And after this, we have our weekly episode of Conversations in the Quran. But for now, we're off to a short commercial break, and we'll see you shortly after this. Now, before the break, we were talking to the lovely Yasmin Hoque, who is talking to us about Islamic wills and Islamic life planning, and I feel inspired to be a little bit more organised. But now let's explore the Quran with Sheikh Salaam Al-Azhari as he reflects on some verses in Surah Baqarah. Here's Conversations in the Quran.